we are in Texas and we got the privilege of meeting Dr. Eric Walsh. Dr. Eric, were you involved in ministry when you were little?
I was, but I saw you guys' ministry, and it wasn't like yours, which is very personal, and I love it. But when we would do 10 efforts at our church, we would set up on a corner in the city, and the great preachers would come in and preach for weeks and weeks and weeks, not like today. They preach for 2 months. We kids would be a part of the teams that would go to pass out flyers and invite people to come to the meetings to hear about Jesus. And sometimes I remember being 10 years old and convincing a man to put down his cigar and the woman that was with him to stop drinking alcohol. I was just a little kid. And they listened to me and put it down and came to the meetings. And that summer, they were baptized and joined our church.
Praise God. What's your favorite topic to preach about?
That is an amazingly perfect question. I would say, on the one hand, it's prophecy. I really do like looking at prophecy and Daniel and Revelation. But I love prophecy mainly because I love to preach about Jesus. And he is so into the prophecies, and we find him in the prophecy. So it's prophecy, but as the prophecy really lifts Jesus up.
What's your favorite animal, Dr. Walsh?
So I have 2 favorite animals. Can I have 2?
Oh, sure.
Okay, good. All right, so the first one is a lion. I love lions because they just look so strong and brave. And I actually got to meet one in Africa. And I didn't like him as much when I was in person with him though, because he was about 10 feet in front of me and it wasn't a zoo. We were actually in his house in the savannah. And he was very scrawny because he hadn't eaten in a long time. And the guy with me was telling me, oh, that's a young lion. He hasn't eaten in forever. See how skinny he is. And I said, so why are we so close to him then? That's my question. And he said, if I take my gun and shoot it, pow, all the animals will run. That's what the man said to me. I said, good, so will I, because I'm not going to get bitten by a lion. But the lion was very nice, actually. And I got to meet one in person, so that was beautiful. My other favorite animal is the dolphin. Dolphins are amazing. And my first real job, because I've been working since I was about 13, but my first job where I had like a government paycheck that came along with it was at a place called SeaWorld. I worked at the ice cream place inside SeaWorld. And so after we closed and everybody left, we would go play with the sea animals. So we'd go where the dolphins thing is, and we would go and we didn't jump in the tank or anything, but we'd be able to put our hand in the water and see the dolphins do stuff and see the other animals do stuff like the penguins and stuff. That was amazing. So I love dolphins because they're smart. Porpoises, dolphins, they're brilliant. They're actually the next smartest set of animals after humans. They along with chimpanzees. So I just love dolphins. When I get to heaven, I'm going to have a pet dolphin.
Do you have a message for children?
I actually do have a message for children. It's a message I was given when I was a kid, and it was very helpful for me. The first one is, don't get distracted by the things of the world. You're actually not missing out on things when you're not participating in the things of the world. When I was a kid, we were the only Seventh-day Adventist in my school. And I was to public school. And so kids would come back every Monday and talk about the Saturday morning cartoons and the movies they saw in the theaters, and I never saw any of them. And I used to feel bad about it. But as I got older, I realized I didn't miss anything. It was actually better I wasn't exposed to all that stuff. And so I learned that lesson when I was a kid. But the other lesson I want to share with you is that when I was also a kid, a little older, maybe a teenager now, one of my pastors did say to me, when you grow up, you're going to be a preacher. And I said, you're crazy. I'm not going to be a preacher. Preachers aren't cool. That's what I told him. And then he said, yes, you are. And I said, no, preachers aren't cool. I'm serious. I'm not going to do it. And he said, yeah, you are. And he was right. And I became a preacher after all. So the other lesson is God has a calling for you, and you can't get away from it.
Do you have a story?
Yes, I have a few, but I'm going to pick one. I think probably one of the best stories for me would be a story about one of my favorite people in the world, my mother's sister, my Aunt Joan, who's still alive, and my mother has passed, but her sister's still alive. And when I was a kid, she was my favorite aunt. And when I'd be walking home from school, sometimes she'd be going to the bank to get her check, and she'd pick me up and drive me around and give me a lollipop and stuff. And I just loved her. She was amazing. I'd spend nights at her house. But I was always really sad when I was a kid because she didn't go to church. and she smoked cigarettes and stuff like that. And I always, we'd have worship at home and talk about heaven, and I'd get really sad because I think, man, my aunt's not gonna make it to heaven, and I love her so much. But the story ends good. Just a few weeks ago, actually, I was preaching down in Miami where she lives, and when I made the appeal for someone to give their life to Jesus, guess who came up front? My aunt. She came up front and gave her life to Jesus. So I actually got to see the story all the way through from when I was a little kid to her coming up front to give her life to the Lord. So just goes along with you never give up. And the people you love when you're a child, you'll love them your whole life. It's not too early to start praying for them, because I used to pray for her every time we had family worship. And by God's grace, I saw her give her life to Jesus.
Praise God. Thank you, Dr. Walsh.
Thank you. My privilege.
You're welcome.